Okay.
Maybe had a question.
No, just inform us when we can drop this thing.
When the clock strikes 6:30, babe, time to head for golden lights. It's a good time for a great taste dinner at McDonald's. It's Mac tonight. Come on, make it Mac tonight.
Well, you ask about the McDonald's. We lovingly call this place McMoon's.
McDonald's, really.
You were young and curious.
I was like, I kind of almost want to get a hamburger at NASA. I was really, what the heck's going on? So I go to the side of the building, and it's not a McDonald's anymore. It's all like, it looks like kind of shut down, but around the side door, I always do side doors. You never heard the
So it's a facade.
Inside are all the tapes for the moon landing. And first I find this out by the guy who's working there.
So, the moon landing tapes are sitting in a McDonald's.
They're not tapes, right? They're reels. They're reels, but they're all stacked up and like.
Well, the legend is it sits 700 boxes and 13,000 reels.
Well, I mean.
Did you see 700 boxes of?
No, the first thing I saw when I got it. Well, maybe. I mean, there's lots of reels. If you think about how you can stack like tapes, you could easily have. You could easily have 700 in like the back of a McDonald's.
Right. Good guy.
Well, you've got a guy there who's he's wearing a sarong and he's got long hair and he's running the place. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he identifies as a dude. But,
well, that's pretty symbolic right there then, okay.
But I'm just saying, like, this person who's hanging out there, working there, was like, oh yeah, this is what we do here. We're keeping all of the magnetic tapes of the old stuff, and I was like, oh. And like, yeah, we're not sure how to actually decrypt some of this stuff. I mean, I talked for a while before I got to that point. I was like, I do. I mean, I know how to do that. We could totally do that. Because I worked for a company as a 13-year-old, cleaning gold records, golden books. I used to be able to clean the scratches out of WAV files like as a kid. I was the only one who could do it in Santa Cruz at the time. There were people that were coming in from like England to do it, and I was like a kid. So, but now I'm like a little bit older, like we could use that to like clean these reels, and it wasn't much more than like 2 months later that it was all gone.
Right.
but yeah, I mean.
So they did exist. Or?
Oh yeah, I mean I don't know if those tapes had anything more than Capricorn movie, but they did have tapes. And the story is that they were recorded over at first, was the first thing. They said, oh yeah, what happened is they were reused because we didn't know what to do with that. So they've been recorded over. It's like, okay, well, there are ways to go through that too. Like you can go through a tape and you can remagnetize it and see. Sometimes you can get out stuff that's been recorded several times, especially with the sound file. Because if you have a sound and a video, and those are digital, like Sony style tapes from like those are the 8-inch like magnetic tapes, and so the way this also works, which is kind of interesting to me, is like, 'cause I used to work for CNN, is they have all the tapes in these robot clinics. They have them. If CNN in California needs to watch something, we digitally go into this Unix computer that somebody wrote in the 80s, and it sets up a tape robot that grabs a tape from the. And we know just the names of the files, but you have to know what you're looking for. But if you know, then the robot will grab a cassette and it'll pull it out and it'll play it in a special VCR somewhere in Atlanta or wherever, and then it'll record that onto the internet for 48 hours onto the main server and then delete it. So you can have one thing at a time if you know what you're looking for.
Right.
So they had stuff like that. So all of a sudden they took all those tapes and they removed them from that system.
So you went there, at some point you went there was a shitload of reels there, there was a guy in a fucking sarong with long hair,
Which isn't that weird.
No, okay. Well, for NASA, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And then, and he told you that these were the moon landing tapes on these reels.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And then the next time you went back, they were not there, so you didn't actually see them being erased, or you weren't, you know.
No, yeah. They were like, yeah, like we could clean them up, and then they were just.
So their intention was just to remaster them or something, or.
Well, at the time they were saying that they didn't know how to do it yet, like that it was impossible because the machines that they needed to play them with didn't exist anymore. Right. Well, I'm one of those like flea market rats also, so I have those machines. Yeah. So I have like a barn, you know, full of like, you know, capacitance disc players, you know, like random reel-to-reel like things. I have record players. I have projectors. You know, my dad's like.
I
that
mean, as
too.
far as you're concerned, those reels were nothing more than the footage from a moon landing hoax video shot in a studio in.
Well, I mean, who's to say? That's
knows.
The point. That's the.
Well, why would they want to remaster those though?
Well, I mean, because the thing is, you know, everything we've ever seen.
I think there were simulations. They ran lots of simulations, and then they could bring in whatever simulation they wanted on the day it was happening to fool the people behind the terminals who weren't in on the ruse.
This has nothing to do with anything outside of just how things work, by the way, is what I'm saying, in the agency. But one of the things that they do is they have to have information for the military side of things. So if there was ever a problem, then you would need to have some sort of a cover story. So it makes perfect sense that they might have had a lot of really disingenuous things made in order to fool just the Soviet Union and the American people at that time. And I don't mean to go into that because I don't think that's really like objectively that important. But like
you saw the boxes and you saw the tapes and they were pointed out to you that this was the moon landing footage.
Oh yeah, that was their. If you know if you out of sight, out of mind. But if it's in mind, then it becomes in sight. So they have to have some kind of a thing to tell you. Oh, what is it? It can't be seen. You know why? Because of this excuse. And then boom, more and more excuses until it's gone. And the few things that they ever found, they said had been recorded over, which was the weirdest part, because it was like, okay, when, why, what happened, why would you have done that? You know how these machines are built. Like
save money.
I find it amazing that they're sitting in a McDonald's. I mean, the connection there. I mean, McDonald's being a
golden arches, The teal one, also instead of red, was also interesting because the dawning of the teal era.
So what the fuck are they doing there?
Aquarian stuff. Well, I don't know, but.
Well,
also one last thing is you were talking about like the moon. If it was somehow, if there was footage that was dramatized, let's say, that was installed in this experience that we've all had, then you think about Kubrick, right? And so everyone talks about Kubrick, right? HAL for Hal, which is actually like after HI, you know, ABLM. So you have Hal's IBM, you know, and so there's a lot of stuff that works around with Kubrick that has to do with building a system that was. Also, after he made Barry Lyndon, he used all these, NASA gave him cameras to do it. Special cameras that were able to shoot in the low light.
He filmed in the old buildings under candlelight.
Yeah.
His demise, wasn't it?
Well, so his daughter being into Scientology, and he'd already wanted, I think his actual demise, he was allowed to finish that one, because it was like, don't mess with this. But he was actually in the process of making another film, Artificial Intelligence.
Right.
And then so Spielberg took that over, you know.
Yeah.
And so that movie's
released 30 years to the day from when they supposedly set down on the moon.
Yeah, and so the interesting about that is that movie's not actually about aliens, right? A lot of Americans who've seen that movie associate it with the Spielbergian idea of aliens, but at the end of the movie you realize those are artificial intelligences, not aliens. Those are human-made artificial intelligences that destroyed the planet because they were designed to save the Earth, and they knew that humans were the culprits. So they flooded everybody, they destroyed the system, and they took it over. And at the end they realized they needed some humans. So they have some humans that they wake up and watch emulations about every once in a
while. Can I ask one more couple of questions? You saw these boxes. What did they look like? The actual boxes? Did they have any?
They're just black boxes.
Black boxes, not cardboard boxes.
Well, they're cardboard, but they're black. You know, they're like the regular Sony style.
And what sort of size and how many were there?
They were about 8 inches. So they're about this big. Yeah.
And it was like a stack of boxes, was it, in the corner?
And they're stacked along the walls, and there was like probably the whole wall. I mean, it was like the entire place. No, more like a wall like this. They were stacked along.
And there was no labelling on it or anything. It didn't say like Apollo 1, Apollo 2.
There might have been white there were white stickers, but I don't recall there being any words on them. There might have been a number.
Yeah.
I think there was a number, but
Right.
not like any sort of symbol on it. Like it was just like okay, so you had like N-31034, you know, things like that.
-33-666.
Couple sixes there probably,
Yeah.
yeah, 666. But
Nah.
I didn't see that. I'll admit that.
Well, there you go. So there's a guy right there who saw the boxes of the
Well,
so-called.
Yeah, and the thing is that there was like an entire wall of them, and then afterwards they ended up admitting that they had erased them, and that's the part that really blew my mind. It was like, so you guys.
And you reckon this is around the year 2000
No, this is a little bit later. This is like 2008, 2012.
when they admitted that they did?
Yeah,
But
because at that point they'd taken the things, and I don't know when they'd actually erased stuff. They probably erased stuff in the early, late 80s to early 90s. And that might have something to do with the Columbia shuttle mission, right? Because they have the Columbia shuttle where they covered in ceramics, and then one exploded with a wouldn't you know it, a teacher in it. And they were actually supposed to have Big Bird on the plane. And Big Bird decided, the guy I played Big Bird decided not to go because his wife was like, don't
Wise
do it.
decision.
Don't do it. And
Well, no, not a wise decision because nobody died in it anyway. This is a big expensive firework and nobody was on it anyway because those so-called astronauts are still alive today.
I think they
like
might
3
have
of them had
murdered
identical
them.
twins.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
Yeah, that's true. That is
Yeah,
true.
nobody died.
But that teacher lady, you don't think that lady died?
No, there's plenty of evidence that shows
Okay.
that her name's Judith Resnick. She's a teacher at
You got something on your video.
That'd be cool. I haven't seen that. I'd like to know more about that. I was
Yeah.
always like, oh man, they killed that lady. Now I feel like.
I mean, there's a
they
bit of
got away with
suspicion
a lot.
about Judith Resnick, whether that is actually her. But you've got 2 or 3 of the other astronauts. They're still using the same names.
They're twin brothers.
And when they were approached about it, they said, "Oh no, that was my twin brother." And there's no record of them going to the funeral or anything like that. It just the whole thing sucks. It doesn't make sense. And what's the fucking odds of that? You know?
No, Nissa. It means to deceive.
There you
What are you
go.
gonna do?
There you go.
Never a straight answer.
Also, the lovely the compass, which is a really augmented one, like a serpent's tongue. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, we said the other day, didn't we, about NASA? There was the National Aeronautics and Space Administration in reverse gematria. When you assign a number to each letter, 666.
Right.
666.
But you know, knowing the
clues are
number,
there.
I think there's a thing about that also. Is like it doesn't mean that the number is evil. It actually associates
No.
with knowing evil, being wise enough to.
Well,
So-
the Bible calls it the number of man.
Right.
It? Is that something to do with our cellular makeup or something
Yeah.
like that? Isn't it?
Might be-
Both man
so-
and beast.
Both man and beast.
I've been interested in this idea that the Navy and NASA have been using submarines to go through stargates. If you think of it like a DeLorean, and you're opening a portal, and you go through a 666 hertz portal in a stargate,
666 hertz. I never thought about that.
that could be an inner space portal instead of an
No,
outer
that would be
space
an
portal.
interesting cinematic.
Well, let's get a tone generator up. Let's plump out 666 hertz right now and see if we can all transport.
I
something.
think I'm
played
a
666 hertz. I played
It's
432,
nice talking to you
322,
guys. Have a nice
388.
one. I'm out of here.
And 430, I played 66, all of them in front of my dad, and he had pretty interesting responses to all of them. Yeah. I think
I
he
do not
was,
consent.
Have a smoke. Well, that was interesting.
In space, no, you're not. You're lying to the whole fucking world. Astronauts, they're just actors of courses, yeah. Y'all get paid. Look at me, I'm floating in space. No, you're not. You're lying to the whole human race, man. Well, another thing I noticed when I looked at these fools, they're filming spacewalks and buoyancy pools. Your NASA's gonna tell you that it's just for training to practice for space station maintaining. Well, I thought about that, but if that's the case, then why the fuck can I see bubbles in space? Take a hard look at the next spacewalk and tell me if you can see bubbles at all. Open your mind, man, I'll bet you a quarter those spacewalks are filmed underwater. What's the next slide?
Okay, folks, here we are today. We're doing long-term captures of Lunar Orbiter 2 images. This is the near-side equatorial region, and what we're seeing here are just framelets going by. This right here is looking at the scope. This is looking at a record of part of the demodulator. Over here, looking at the scope of just the control track and some of the hardware coming over here, we're seeing the capture. These are long-term captures. Each one of these are 2.5 gigabytes of capture files. We figured out how to carve the files up now, and we actually keep printed records as well of what we're doing. And we're having a good day here, just capturing images and tapes off of the Lunar Orbiter images. Lunar Orbiter Image Recovery Project. 1 meter resolution. No one in all of human history until the mid-1960s had seen the moon up close. And they did it with this camera right here. This is in the days before CCD, so it was a 70 millimeter film camera. And how it worked, it had almost a mile of film on board, and it took images that were processed on board the spacecraft and then were scanned. The images were scanned with a 5-micron light beam and transmitted back to the Earth through what's called the DSIF, which is now the Deep Space Network for NASA, at Goldstone, Madrid, and Wimmera in Australia. And this is what they did with them. They printed out these big pictures and they walked around there going, oh, you know, that looks like a good place to land. Oh, is there too many rocks there? Look at all those craters. And so they did this with tapes. They recorded the data on tapes. And what they did after they went around and did their walkthrough, they went to these tapes and they took and digitized these tapes and put them on the world's largest supercomputer at the time, which is a UNIVAC 1170, had 256K of RAM. And so they processed these images off of these analog tapes, and this is what we saw. This is what the American people saw in 1966. And these tapes, though, you got to understand, on the spacecraft, it was very high quality 70 millimeter film. But this is what the American people saw. That's not 70 millimeter film quality. And so when I was a student researching in the 1980s, I kind of figured this out. And I went and looked, and I found out these tapes existed, but you couldn't get them because there wasn't any machines anymore that could run the tapes. This is a guy in 1987. They were trying to bring the tape drives back to life because the federal government, it's the opposite of planned obsolescence. It's let's keep it forever. And the tapes were in the federal archives, and they got them out and they brought them to JPL. And Nancy Evans, who worked on the Viking program, she saved the tapes. And this is what people do all over to save our history. She saved the tapes, she found the drives, and they tried to bring them back. Well, they couldn't because in the late 1980s, technology really wasn't there to do the kind of stuff that we can do today. So, in 2007, this is what I found in Nancy's garage in Los Angeles. These tape drives had been in her garage in a horse property outside of Los Angeles for about 15 years, but I'd worked at a television studio repairing these tape drives. I ran a studio in LA. I'm going, oh, what the heck, I think we can do it. But this is what it looked like when we found it. And then we found the tapes. The tapes were at NASA JPL, and they were saved because somebody found out that we had lost the original images for the Apollo moon landings. And so they said, oh my God, you can't get rid of any tapes. And so we found these tapes right before they were going to be destroyed. And so Dr. P. Warden, who is the center director at NASA Ames, I've known him since I was a student, and he said, Dennis, come on up. So we got the tapes from Nancy, the tape machines from Nancy's, the tapes from NASA JPL, and we brought them up to McMoon's. At NASA Ames Research Park is part of the Moffett Navy Base, and the Moffett Navy Base was shut down, and this McDonald's had just shut down, and so we were able to move in there. And so we got to work. We refurbished the drives. Had a bunch of students helping us refurbish the drives. We did that. We did our techno-archaeology, going back and finding what the old formats were, what was on the tape, and then we worked and we worked. In time, this is what our Earthrise looked like after digital processing in 2008. This is a comparison to what the American people saw and what we did. And this helped us get some work with the National Snow and Ice Data Center to find out the edge of the Antarctic ice pack in that year. Our digital reprocessing, we found out that we had 4 times the dynamic range from the magnetic tape data. And so this is a surveyor spacecraft on the moon. This is the before shot with the Apollo lunar landing from Apollo 12 on top. This is 14 on top of it. We were able to zoom, 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 and zoom, and we found the rock that the Apollo 14 astronauts were standing by when they said they couldn't find the crater. Well, the crater was on the other side of the rock. They just didn't know it. So this is another one of our images, and so we've just had an amazing, a fun time with this. We captured 1,500 tapes, and we're still in the process of digitizing. We're working with Adobe right now. They're trying to help us out to do the final image processing. Now our next adventure in techno-archaeology, even faster, is the ISE-3 reboot project, which was a global project, mostly volunteer, to recover this spacecraft launched in 1978. It had a 3-year lifetime. It was still alive in 2014. NASA had thrown away all the hardware, though, to talk to it. So this is a spacecraft, and this is what it looked like. Its original mission was is a first spacecraft and invented the discipline of heliophysics. And it set out 1 million miles in front of the Earth towards the sun. And it did that for 3 years until some very bright scientists said, hey, we can do all of these little maneuvers here, and it'll be the first spacecraft ever to go to a comet. So ISE-3 in 1985 was the first spacecraft to pass within 8,000 kilometers directly through the tail of Comet Giacobini-Zinner. Well, in 2014, these guys, they set the spacecraft in 1987 to come back to the Earth in 2014. Using software-defined radio and a bunch of really good hackers, we put together, went to Arecibo with a ham radio transmitter. Oh yeah, we used the biggest dish in the world. We kind of cheated there. So we were at Arecibo, we put it all together, and we were able to command the spacecraft 6 weeks from the beginning of the project, when it was 15 million kilometers away from the Earth. This is the heart and soul of our project. It's kind of a miracle of 1960s American technology. Part of scientific validity is to be able to go back to the original sources. And if you can't do that, you don't have science. Right here is where mankind's first outpost is going to be, permanent outpost on the moon is going to be right here on this ridge.
Don't you get tired of thinking about the moon ever?
I'm a lunatic, man. What you talking about? Think about how much money it would cost today for NASA to fly a mission to 1966. Can't do it.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm not going to break it. To mount to anything.
Deck's on, Mark. That max acceleration?
No.
Man, you are really bouncing.
Is he on the ground at all? 10 kilometers. Huh?
He's got about 2 wheels on the ground. He's a big rooster tail out of all 4 wheels. And as he turns, he skids. The back end breaks loose just like on snow. Come on back, John. Hey, the deck is running. Man, I'll tell you, Andy's never seen a driver like this. Okay, when he hits the craters and starts bouncing is when he gets his rooster tail. He makes sharp turns. Hey, that was a good stop. Those wheels just locked. Mark off.
Okay. Do you want to do it one more time?
Yeah.
At about a minute, 5 seconds that
Okay,
time.
mark on. Okay, you could have gone the other way. Go ahead. There's the big craters there, though, aren't they?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
One of those holes.
They want 4 minutes worth, John. Well, it's 1 minute and 5. Then you can do it twice more.
Surely.
Okay, turn sharp. have no desire to turn me up. Okay, here's a Sharpie. Hey, that's great. Man, those things, when those wheels really dig in, John, when you turn is when you get the rooster tail. The suspension system on that thing is fantastic.
That sounds good. We sound like we've probably got enough of the Grand Prix. We're willing to let you go on from here. Call that a Grand Prix.
Okay. Man, that was all four wheels off the ground there. Okay, Max, stop. Okay, I don't want to do that. Okay, excuse me. That's a no-no. Okay, Dak, off.
This program is coming to you via Relay 2 satellite, a spacecraft orbiting the Earth at a speed of over 17,000 miles per hour.
Recent talk, carry on. Recent talk, carry on.